The first quarter of the season is in the book, so it's time to evaluate how each first-round rookie is contributing today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'd like to thank you for making Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every day. And a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That'll get you $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Joe, I regret to inform you that Evan Neal has not made any improvements from year one to year two to this stage.
Giants O-line's pretty bad, man. Pretty bad.
Is that
banged up?
Pretty bad. Is that the formula for 11 sacks in a game? And some of it's on Daniel Jones, right? Like sacks are never universally an offensive line statistic, no matter what you're told otherwise. But
yeah,
he has some problems.
They got some trouble, man. Real trouble.
And, oh, by the way, you're at Miami and at Buffalo the next 2 weeks for the New York Giants.
Are both of those games on the road for them too?
Yes.
Oh, boy.
And the second one's on Sunday Night Football. Good thing we got that New York market in between all those Jets games. Hey, at least Jets were entertaining last week. But
right,
those Jets games and Giants games, at least we got New York in the primetime slot.
At least the Jets have an excuse. Like Aaron Rodgers is a quarterback. It's a different team, right? There's different appeal.
Yeah.
Like the Giants, I mean Saquon and Andrew Thomas. I mean, one thing in the NFL that you and I talk about all the time, nobody cares about your problems. Nobody cares, right? Like
next
the tape is a tape. The game is the game, right? You don't get any more points, any less points for injuries. It's unfortunate, but it's part of the game. Everyone's got injuries.
So it can add some important context for sustainability versus not sustainability, or room for improvement versus not room for improvement. But at the end of the day, you're going to put that straight line in the win and the loss column. And Giants are looking
rough.
Pretty rough.
Well,
we're not here to bag on the Giants.
No.
We're not here to do conference power rankings this week. We teased that this week would be a little different because it's the end of the first quarter of the 2023 NFL season. So today, we're looking at the 2023 first-round NFL draft, all 31 draft selections, and giving out a letter grade with some conditions. Would you like to confirm your conditions, please?
Yeah, so we have an A through D scale. And an A would mean that they are exceeding expectations. A B is that they're meeting expectations. A C is below expectations. And a D is greatly below expectations.
So whose expectations? Our expectations?
Yours. Your personal expectation based on why they were drafted, where they were drafted, and what they were supposed to be like in terms of early impact. That's my criteria.
Okay, very good. Just want to make sure the criteria is clear, because some people may hear a letter grade and not like it or like it too much and get too excited. We don't want to do that.
Yeah, this is completely subjective. Completely.
So you are allowed to get mad at us
for
it because it is subjective. Just know we're not looking at grades or letter grade or metric grades or anything. This is just what we've observed with our own two eyes versus our own expectations versus the draft status of that player.
Yeah, and it's a 4-game sample size, right? I mean, like nothing about this defines any of these players' career. It's just, all right, what have we seen and what did we think we would have saw?
It's enough to have an opinion, but not enough to write it in Sharpie.
So we're going to move quickly through the declaration of the grades, and then we're going to get into a conversation on overachievers and underachievers. So this first part's going to be declaring grades.
Okay, so we'll rip through it because anytime we do a league-wide show, the concern is how are we going to have enough time if we need only 30 minutes to cover all the ground that we do? Well, this is how. We're going to just do the thing first and then talk about it. So, first overall pick, Bryce Young.
D.
I gave a C. We'll talk about it.
Okay.
CJ Stroud, quarterback, Houston Texans.
A+.
A. Will Anderson, defensive end, Houston Texans.
B+.
B. I gave no pluses or minuses. So,
all right, I'll remove them moving forward.
no, you don't have to. It's extra.
Don't make me laugh. I'll start coughing. We don't need that.
Anthony Richardson, quarterback, Indianapolis Colts.
B.
A.
Okay.
Devon Witherspoon, Seattle Seahawks.
A.
A. Paris Johnson, Arizona Cardinals.
C.
B. Tyree Wilson, Las Vegas Raiders.
D.
D. Bijan Robinson, Atlanta Falcons.
A.
A. Jalen Carter, Philadelphia Eagles. A.
Okay, A.
A. Yeah, come on. We can talk about it.
He just doesn't start. That's my only gripe is he doesn't start. So that's it.
Do not care. Chicago Bears, Darnell Wright.
C.
C. Peter Skoronsky, asterisk here, he's been hurt.
I gave him an incomplete, right? One game was good, then he missed the next 3. So I give him incomplete.
Okay. That's fair. So there's an omission there. We can accept incomplete evaluations. It's part of how we do roster grading in general. So we can accept it here for missing time. Jahmyr Gibbs, Detroit Lions.
C.
B. Lucas Van Ness.
C.
Green Bay Packers. C. Broderick Jones, Pittsburgh Steelers.
D.
B.
No, D is in dog.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, okay.
No, he only recently played. Dan Moore got hurt last week.
Right.
They didn't draft this guy not to be able to beat up Dan Moore.
Incomplete evaluation on that one because he's played 55 snaps.
No, you got to play, man. You got to win that job as starting left tackle over Dan Moore.
Okay. Will McDonald.
D.
I gave a C. We'll talk about that one too. Emmanuel Forbes.
C.
C. Christian Gonzalez.
A.
A, but a total bummer.
Yeah.
A labrum tear in his shoulder. I know he's seeking a second opinion. That stinks because it was off to a really electric start. He looked really, really good. Jack Campbell, Detroit Lions.
C.
B. Kalijah Kancey, defensive tackle, Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I give him incomplete. Same deal with Skoronsky.
Yep, that's fair. Jackson Smith and Jigba.
C.
C. Miami Dolphins, forfeit.
That's on you. You didn't have to bring that up.
Well, I'm just reading the Wikipedia sheet.
Okay. All right.
I mean, it's probably technically a B because it's meeting expectations. If you don't make a pick, you're not going to get any contributions.
Yeah, so B.
B.
Solid B, yeah.
Quentin Johnston, wide receiver, LA Chargers.
D.
C. Zay Flowers, Baltimore Ravens.
A.
B. Jordan Addison, Minnesota Vikings.
B.
B. Deontay Banks, New York Giants.
B.
C. Dalton Kincaid, Buffalo Bills.
B.
B. Mozzie Smith, Dallas Cowboys.
D.
I gave him a C.
I want it to be okay, but
you don't have to. You don't have to come up. It's fine. Anton Harrison, Jacksonville Jaguars.
B.
B.
Last two games been a lot better.
Miles Murphy, Cincinnati Bengals.
D.
D. Brian Brzee, New Orleans Saints.
C. I could be talked into a B.
I went C. Nolan Smith, Philadelphia Eagles.
D.
D. D is in dog?
Yeah, he's playing like not barely at all. So
okay, I gave him a C. And then Kansas City Chiefs, Felix Uzoma.
C.
C. So that is the grade. So very little overlap. You can tell we didn't do them together, which is a good thing. We can ask each other questions. We can talk about individual players. And that's going to come up next. So we saved 20 minutes to just let the conversation go wherever it's going to go. Hey. So we're very proud of this decision to change the structure and put us in a position to have success.
We are in a good spot. Folks, maybe you want to go watch these rookies play football this year. Well, get you some tickets with the Game Time app. It is the fast and easy way to buy all the tickets that you need for the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They've got killer deals on last-minute tickets, all-in prices, views from your seat, and a best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. The app is awesome. They have flash deals, last-minute tickets, and they have these deals right up to the day of the event, so you don't have to plan months in advance to go. You could take a look on there, see if you like the prices, and get a ticket. And the tickets are also sent right to your phone, so you don't have to dig through emails. I love that. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Okay, so our objective here is to talk about overachievers, players who have surpassed the expectations that we and their draft stock set for them. Conversation probably has to start with CJ, right? And I know we've thrown flowers at CJ Stroud this week on the show already. But my guy's balling.
Yeah, I mean, the historic start to his career. He's fourth in the NFL in passing yards right now. 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. On a team that doesn't have the offensive line they're expecting to have, a team with a brand new coaching staff, a first-year play caller. Like all the stuff that you would be concerned about. No real established wide receiver one. You know what I mean? Not as much to work with as you'd like. And he has stepped in and played at a high level and, really a historic start to his career in terms of numbers. The Texans are 2-2. They look like they're on the up and up. I couldn't be more impressed with CJ Stroud.
And I think another thing that's impressive about it too is he's gotten better every week. Like there's tangible improvement to Baltimore, to Indianapolis, to Jacksonville, to Pittsburgh, and pushing the ball further down the field and taking less sacks and reducing the amount of turnover-worthy plays that he has, getting the ball out of his hands faster in succession every week. The ball has gotten out of his hands faster than the week before. So the building of a confident player here, and I think the irony is you think about the conversations that we had with Stroud and Ohio State's offense in the preseason with Bobby Slowick and the ideology and the discrepancies between what he was asked to do versus what he is asked to do. And he's taken to it very quickly. And usually when you see something like that, it's a pretty good indicator that it's going to be a sustainable thing because the player just gets it. This is not, just played one game out of his life and has completely changed the narrative. Very dramatic improvement over the course of the first 4 weeks.
What's interesting about kind of having this focus of a first round conversation is I think some of the biggest overachieving rookies weren't picked in the first round, right?
Of course.
You can get into the Puka Nakuas, the Tank Dells, those types of guys. But I don't know. I really wanted to bring up Zay Flowers as part of this conversation. 24 receptions, 244 yards in 4 games. And, we've seen Baltimore missing a lot of their pieces offensively, whether it's Dobbins, Mark Andrews missed a game earlier, OBJ's hurt, Rashad Bateman's hurt. But Zay Flowers has been the steady presence in this game for this team for 4 games. And bringing in 24 of 29 targets for 244 yards, showing some consistency, showing availability, making some plays down the field. I'm impressed with him being able to step into this role despite all of those factors not being in place in a new offense and, showing right away that he's going to be productive. I mean, 24 catches in 4 games. I hate to do math, but I mean, that's a lot. That's going to push for, if he stays on that path, I mean, close to 100 catches. I mean, a lot of catches, right? I'm trying so hard not to do math right now, but it's a good pace.
28.
He has 24 catches.
And 6 per game.
So it's
102.
So 6 times 17 is 102.
6 times 10 is 60, and then 6 times 7 is 42. 60 plus 42.
Beautiful job. So I mean, that's good stuff, man.
Yeah. I'm glad he had the bounce back week that he had this week versus week 1 and week 3 were, I want to say scheme touch because that's not accurate, but like just trying to get the ball in his hands and manufacture touches and doing a disservice to his ability to do the things that you mentioned, like making plays down the field. So the reason I wasn't head over heels over the moon was I look at he's targeted, he runs 28 routes against Houston in week 1, targeted 10 times with an average depth of target of 2.6 yards. Right. Then in week 3, he comes out and he's targeted 10 times against the Colts on 38 routes with an average depth of target of 3.5 yards. So let's get those games out of here, right? Like, have the opportunities to make plays down the field. And if he does more of what he did in week 2 and more of what he did this past weekend, then we might come back at the midway point at the end of the second quarter, and my grade would be an A. So that's why I came in a little lower than you on Zay Flowers.
All right. Touche.
Let's see. Other players that we graded favorably.
I'd love to mention Devon Witherspoon.
Devon Witherspoon's probably up there. And then if we wanted to touch on Jalen Carter or Bijan Robinson, we can close with those guys too. But let's go ahead and talk Devon Witherspoon.
Well, I think everybody got a chance to see him against the Giants and the impact that he made in that game. What do you have? 2 sacks, a pick 6. That was like a 97-yard return for a touchdown, 3 quarterback hits, 2 tackles for loss. I mean, the guy's a baller, and he had a big game last week against Carolina as well. He leads all rookies with sacks. He has 4 sacks in 3 games, which is 2 more than any other rookie. He leads all rookies in interceptions with double the next guy. I mean, the dude is just a playmaker. He brings a physical element to that defense. And I mean, I guess wasn't you watched him at Illinois, you knew this guy was a dog, right? But for him to immediately show up and be making the plays and having that impact and having that physical presence about him, man, like, it looks like he's an absolute stud.
I want to go to Jalen Carter. So I know you said B, right?
Yeah, but it was a B plus, and I just like, okay, he's just not starting. That's the only gripe that I have. He's playing a large amount of snaps, but he's just not starting.
Yeah. So he's had 104 pass rushes this year. And in 104 pass rushes, he has 20 total pressures. That 20 total pressures for interior defensive linemen across the league is second only to Aaron Donald. And Aaron Donald's rushed the passer 32 more times than Jalen Carter and has 2 more rushes.
I changed my grade to an A.
So Quinnen Williams, 122, has 18. Again, Jalen Carter, 104 pass rushes for 20 pressures. Quinnen Williams, 122, 18. Javon Hargrave, 128, 17. Jeffrey Simmons, 148, 16. John Allen, 143, 16. Daquan Jones, 78, 15. So his pass rush win rate is actually right in line with Jalen Carter's, just separated by a few percentage points. Devontae Wyatt, 78, 14. Dexter Lawrence, 81 pass rushes for 13 pressures. And then a slew of players that includes Grady Jarrett, Kenny Clark, Ed Oliver, Javon Kinlaw, John Kaminsky, that all are tied with 12. Kenny Clark has the most pass rushes out of that group with 119. So, like, this is a who's who of the best interior defensive lineman in football, and Jalen Carter is outproducing all of them in pass rush situations. It's pretty incredible.
Getting it done. You want to mention Bijan? Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, no, we just need to get Tyler Algier out of the way.
Well, okay, so let's talk about it, because there's Jahmyr Gibbs got to get David Montgomery out of the way, and I'm not sure they need to. I think they need to continue with a fair amount of David Montgomery.
I watched the Falcons try to mount a comeback in the second half against Jacksonville.
Toy Story or
Toy Story,
of
course. And move the ball. And then make a conscious decision to take Bijan Robinson out of the game and put Tyler Algier into the game and kill 2 consecutive drives in the fourth quarter. Because they decided to give Tyler Algier a touch instead of Bijan Robinson. There's a role, there's no question, for Tyler Algier. But the investment and the talent and the intersection here, like, if you told me you only had Bijan Robinson as meeting expectations because your expectations were through the moon and they're not giving him through the moon workload, I would get it. But Bijan is as advertised. He's everything you hoped he would be. And yet we have this refusal to give him the ball in favor of a 5th-round pick the previous year who rushed for 1,000 yards, and is a perfectly fine rotational NFL running back.
You went through all that and didn't even mention the yards per attempt discrepancy between Bijan and Algier. 6 yards per rush for Bijan, 3.4 for Algier.
What are we doing? And how many carries does Tyler Algier have?
45 compared to 53.
Does Bijan Robinson have?
53. And then, of course, the passing game discrepancy is pretty significant, where Bijan has 19 catches for 134 yards and Algier has 6 for 32. Yeah, I think you. I mean, you can't. Bijan can't have every touch, but like the ratio should be more significantly.
If you're trying to throw the ball and come back and come from behind to win a game, Tyler Algier shouldn't touch the field.
Hard to argue with that.
So
there you have it. Our overachievers, guys that have really stood out in terms of these first rounders. We're going to talk about some of the underachievers here in just a moment. But first, I need to tell you about FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's just a $5 bet. That'll get you $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use and navigate, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnNFL and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
And now time for the part that nobody wants to talk about, underachievers. But they do exist. Whether it's Bryce Young or Will McDonald or Broderick Jones or
Tyree Wilson
or Darnell Wright. No shortage of options. Where would you like to start?
Bryce Young, I guess, right? I mean,
so here's why I didn't give him a D.
Okay.
My expectations for Bryce Young weren't in line with being the #1 overall pick.
That's okay. That's a really fair point. But I also, and I agree with you, and I started this conversation by saying it's my own personal expectations. But when you're the #1 pick over CJ Stroud and over Anthony Richardson, and the team gives up what they did to go get you, and they have their choice of these players, I don't know. That to me, that shifts me away from what I think should happen. And I say, okay, well, you guys went out there and put it all out there. You need to tell me that you're right. And so far, I mean, do you have any indication of that?
No, do not. Missed a start already. Injuries aren't a concern, despite his stature, and only missed 1 game in Alabama. Well, getting ripped down by 2 fingertips by NFL pass rushers, and a 1-to-6 turnover or big time throw to turnover worthy play percentage or ratio, according to Pro Football Focus. And you look at next gen stats and where he's throwing the ball, and you watch him play and tangibly see where he's confident throwing the ball versus where he's not. We've already talked yesterday about the was that on the air or off the air?
Who knows?
Talking about the next gen stats aggressive window percentage for quarterbacks.
No, I think that was off air.
And Bryce is the least aggressive quarterback in contested situations through the first month of the season by a significant margin. There's only like 3 quarterbacks that are below 10%. He's at like 6.8%. So he's not testing tight coverage, and we were sold this bill of goods of being an anticipatory thrower. And I know the wide receivers are bad in Carolina. We knew that from the jump.
Andy Dalton threw for 350 with him.
It feels like a training wheels offense.
What's really fascinating is one of my big gripes is time to throw with Bryce, right? And I talked all about Alabama. It was over 3 seconds. And then to start his NFL career, his first 2 starts, 3.21 against Atlanta, 3.19 against the Saints. It comes down to 2.43 against Minnesota. But what was the answer, Kyle? They threw friggin' behind the line of scrimmage. How many times?
Yeah.
It just was, little
like 13 throws,
screens and checks. It's like
he had 25 completions? I think it was more than half of his completions were like behind the line of scrimmage.
Siri was activated there. I don't know if you
caught
that. Yeah.
So like that's not a sustainable way of playing football.
25
at least,
brother. 25% of his plays were screens against the Vikings. 25%.
Now my series going
Gee,
on.
this has literally never happened in the history of us podcasting, and Siri on both ends is. I said the name again. We're in trouble.
Go away.
Behind the line of scrimmage, 34% of his throws, 11.
So 11 of 32 throws behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, in this Falcons game, like that was their big adjustment. We got to get the ball out of Bryce's hands. So run screens and just dump it down.
By the way, 22% pressure to sack percentage.
That's way high. That's Sam Howell numbers. And he's an escape artist, right?
Yeah, really shifty, big time playmaker outside of structure. All right, we get it.
We'll
go in a different direction. Tyree Wilson. Did you see the contrast of like, or was it Steve Palazzolo? I think it was somebody off the PFF group that was like, it's always interesting to see the focus study of like the upside traits pass rusher versus like the guy with tangibly good tape.
So Trayvon Walker versus Aiden Hutchinson.
So it was Trayvon Walker versus Aiden Hutchinson debate for the number 1 overall pick. And then this year was Will Anderson versus Tyree Wilson.
Yeah.
And Hutch and Anderson have like 8 times the amount of pressures through the first like 3 weeks of the season than the other guys did after. I think that tweet came out after Thursday Night Football. So it was before the Raiders played the Chargers. And it was just this total contrast of like, can we stop doing this? Like, stop caring about S2 for quarterbacks. Stop caring about just being a traits guy versus long arm pass rusher versus a guy who has shown the ability and understanding of how to create a rush play and a rush passer.
I feel a little bit bad for Tyree because he was hurt. You know, I mean, like he didn't really have an off season going into the NFL. Texas Tech, they had him in like 2 gapping, 5 technique, slow off the ball, like just a really different style of situation. Yep. But I mean, the guy has made 0 impact, and they need him, right? With the Chandler Jones situation, like they have nothing else on that D line outside of Max Crosby, and
he has three pressures and 70 pass rushes on the season. So again, sympathetic, and you understand why it's the case. And if the Raiders were being honest about where they were as a franchise, and if you make peace with that, then it's a perfectly fine investment to make. Did you get the impression that the Raiders had an understanding that we are a rebuilding team and we're not going to be competitive this year?
I mean, they were playing earlier this season. They're playing Jerry Tillery at defensive end. Why is Jerry Tillery on a roster?
Kicked out of the game.
Yeah, why is he even on rosters anymore?
So he can get kicked out of the game.
Incredible.
How about Darnell Wright?
I gave him a C. He's starting at right tackle. I mean, I think the speed rush has been the issue for him. I think the run blocking and like otherwise he's been fine, but I can understand like being mindful of those warts that you saw on tape at Tennessee, and they're quickly manifesting themselves.
Especially with the contrast of how bad the Bears' defensive line is, and voluntarily passing and trading down away from Jalen Carter. That's an extra layer to the Darnell Wright assessment that's not fair to Darnell Wright.
Yeah.
But will always be part of the conversation about the Bears picking Darnell Wright. And we made this decision really to benefit Justin Fields, and yet you are continuing to do a disservice with Justin Fields with how you're coaching and scheming up game plans. And I understand Justin Fields had probably his best game as a first 300-yard game in his career as a passer against the Broncos. He started like 18-18 or something like shredded him early in the game. But at the end of the day, your 4-game sample size for what you're having a competent offense is not there. And it's like, man, now you didn't take the better player in favor of taking a tackle to build around your quarterback, but your coach and GM might get fired at the end of this year because you can't win any games. And then the quarterback's going to be out that you used the pick on the tackle for in the first place. And now you're going to look back with real seller's remorse because you didn't just take the best player available and you drafted for a need to help your quarterback. And then you had a regime change and then your quarterback's out on his rear end, whether it's his own fault or not.
Would love for you to comment on Will McDonald because it felt like you had something you wanted to say there.
Well, it was the same thing as the Bryce Young conversation, right?
Okay.
If you say Will McDonald, he's like not dressing for games, like
Week
healthy
2,
scratch.
yeah, he was healthy scratch week 2. Yeah,
That's super underwhelming for a top 15 pick. But I think we live in a world where realistically there was no business. Will McDonald had no business being a top 15 pick,
especially for the Jets.
Right, and you can respectfully to Will McDonald. He's a fun player. I think he's going to have a fine career in the long run. Sell me how he was the best player available.
I can't do that.
Never mind. Like you say, oh, we draft premium positions as the New York Jets, and we're going to add this or add that, and we want to only draft these positions. There was zero outcomes in which he was the best player available at a position of need or best player available for the New York Jets. Whatever their criteria that was that landed him on that, I think puts a pretty heavy lens on unrealistic expectations. But if I'm being truly authentic to where my expectations were for Will McDonald, I didn't have expectations of a top 15 pick. So that's why I didn't give him a D.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. And then I would say the exact thing I said about Bryce Young. Didn't see him like that. They picked him in the top 15, was in a position of need, and here he is playing 10 snaps a game for you in a rotation-heavy defense when you already had Clemens and Huff and Jermaine Johnson and John Franklin Myers and Carl Lawson, who's, of course, injured now, but, like, it never made sense. So I was like, okay, you need to make it make sense, and it hasn't.
Yeah. So, and obviously there's some adversity that's hit that team. Really respect the way that they battled back. But you look at that pick at 15 and you do ask yourself, what else might have been available that would have been helpful for you to have a more complete and competitive roster off the jump in year one?
You and I were talking offensive tackle for him.
Well, and they got jumped for Broderick Jones, but their own internal messaging made it sound like they got their guy all along and Broderick Jones was never in the conversation. Jahmyr Gibbs would be a pretty good upgrade over Dalvin Cook, though, when you say.
That's one of my good takes was Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, you hit that one on the park, good job.
So have some whiffs though, as I've started to consider some of it, but that's one I'll take a lap on.
That's all right. You got to celebrate your wins when you get them, right?
Right.
So Victory Tuesday for Joe here off Dalvin Cook. So Kyle Crabbs, Joe Marino, appreciate you guys checking out the show. Locked On NFL Scouting. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Make it a great rest of your day. We will be back to talk to you all again tomorrow. Peace.